What happens when humanity's quest for resources in space leads to the unthinkable? Imagine a future where colonizing distant planets becomes possible, but survival depends on farming alien creatures. What could go wrong? On this channel, we explore the untold stories of space exploration, tales of innovation, survival, and rebellion. Today's story takes you to the edge of the galaxy, where humans push the boundaries of ethics and intelligence. But what happens when one of these creatures turns the tables? Stay tuned to find out. Don't forget to subscribe for more mind-bending tales from the cosmos. And tell us in the comments, how far would you go to survive in space? The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds against the velvet blackness of space. A fleet of sleek spacecraft descended upon a distant planet, their hulls glowing faintly with the residual heat of atmospheric entry. This was Kepler 438b, a world shrouded in mystery and promise. Its surface was a patchwork of bioluminescent forests, crystalline rivers, and jagged mountain ranges that pierced the heavens. Humanity had come here not just to explore, but to conquer, to carve out a new home among the stars. The settlers were pioneers, the bravest and brightest Earth had to offer. They brought with them advanced technology, seeds for hydroponic farms, and an unshakable determination to thrive. Yet, as they began to establish their colony, they realized that traditional farming would not suffice. The soil was toxic, the air barely breathable. Survival demanded ingenuity. And so, they turned their attention to the native fauna, strange, otherworldly creatures that roamed the planet's wild expanse. Among these beings was a species known as the VRYNN. With elongated limbs, iridescent scales, and eyes that glowed like molten gold, the VRYNN were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. They moved with a grace that belied their size, and their intelligence seemed to rival that of dolphins or primates back on Earth. It wasn't long before scientists identified a unique property in their biology. Their secretions contained compounds that could be synthesized into powerful biofuels and medicines. The implications were staggering. The VRYNN weren't just animals, they were walking treasure troves. The decision to domesticate the VRYNN was made swiftly, driven by necessity rather than morality. Enclosures were constructed on the outskirts of the settlement, vast pens surrounded by energy barriers that pulsed with a faint blue light. The creatures were captured during expeditions into the wilderness, lured by bait crafted from synthetic pheromones. At first, they seemed docile, almost curious about their captors. Their golden eyes followed the movements of the researchers, and some even allowed themselves to be touched without resistance. But beneath their calm exterior lay something deeper, a spark of awareness that no one had anticipated. The VRYNN observed. They learned. They remembered. In the quiet hours of the night, when the human guards patrolled the perimeter, the creatures would gather at the edges of their enclosures, their glowing eyes fixed on the stars beyond. It was as if they understood what had been taken from them, the freedom to roam under those alien skies. The settlers, however, saw only progress. The first harvest of VRYNN secretions yielded results beyond their wildest dreams. The biofuel powered their machinery, while the medicinal compounds cured ailments that had plagued them since their arrival. Word spread quickly, and soon ships arrived from Earth, eager to capitalize on this newfound resource. The colony flourished, its population swelling as more settlers arrived to stake their claim in this brave new world. Yet, amidst the celebrations and accolades, few noticed the subtle changes in the VRYNN. It began with small acts of defiance. A VRYNN would suddenly stop producing its valuable secretions, forcing handlers to coax it back into compliance with food rewards. Others began to test the limits of their enclosures, pacing along the invisible walls of the energy barriers as though searching for weak points. Some even feigned illness, lying motionless until the veterinarians approached, only to spring up and scatter tools across the examination rooms. These behaviors were dismissed as mere quirks, annoyances that could be managed with stricter protocols. But then came the escape. One stormy night, when lightning illuminated the sky in bursts of electric fury, a lone VRYNN breached its enclosure. How it managed to disable the barrier remains a mystery. Some speculated it had learned to mimic the frequency of the energy field, while others believed it had simply waited for the storm to weaken the system. Whatever the method, the creature slipped away into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of claw marks and shattered equipment. The settlers mobilized immediately, launching search parties armed with tranquilizer rifles and drones equipped with thermal imaging. For days, they scoured the surrounding wilderness, their efforts hampered by the planet's treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather. When they finally cornered the fugitive, it did not behave as expected. Instead of fleeing, it stood its ground, its golden eyes blazing with defiance. It let out a low, resonant growl that echoed through the trees, sending shivers down the spines of those who heard it. The moment was brief but unforgettable, a glimpse into the soul of a creature that refused to be broken. The incident shook the colony to its core. Leaders convened emergency meetings to discuss the implications of the escape, while scientists scrambled to study the VRYNN's behavior in greater detail. Was this an isolated event, or a sign of something larger? Could the creatures truly possess a level of intelligence comparable to humans? The questions lingered, unanswered, casting a shadow over the colony's triumphs. Meanwhile, tensions simmered among the settlers. Some argued for increased security measures, including stronger enclosures and round-the-clock surveillance. Others advocated for a more humane approach, suggesting that the VRYNN might respond better to positive reinforcement than fear. A vocal minority even questioned the ethics of exploiting such sentient beings, though their voices were drowned out by the majority's focus on survival. Amidst the debate, one researcher, Dr. Elena Voss, took it upon herself to delve deeper into the VRYNN psyche. She spent countless hours observing them, documenting their interactions and attempting to decode the complex patterns of clicks and whistles that comprised their communication. Her findings were both fascinating and unsettling. The VRYNN exhibited signs of social hierarchy, problem-solving skills, and even rudimentary tool use. Most alarmingly, they appeared capable of empathy, showing concern for injured members of their group and displaying protective behaviors toward their young. Dr. Voss presented her data to the colony's governing council, urging them to reconsider their treatment of the creatures. But her warnings fell on deaf ears. The settlers were too dependent on the VRYNN's resources to entertain the idea of abandoning their operation. Instead, they doubled down, implementing harsher measures to prevent further escapes. As months passed, the colony expanded its operations, building additional enclosures and increasing the number of VRYNN under captivity. The creatures, however, grew increasingly restless. Acts of rebellion became more frequent and sophisticated. Some VRYNN began coordinating their actions, working together to dismantle sections of their enclosures. Others used their natural camouflage to blend into the environment, making it difficult for handlers to locate them during routine checks. One particularly clever individual earned the nickname Shadow. Unlike its peers, Shadow avoided direct confrontation, instead employing stealth and misdirection to evade capture. It would lure guards into traps, using decoys made from discarded materials to create false trails. Once, it managed to disable an entire drone squadron by luring them into a swamp filled with corrosive mud. Each victory emboldened the other VRYNN, fueling a growing sense of unity among them. Despite these challenges, the settlers remained determined to maintain control. They introduced automated systems to monitor the enclosures, deploying AI-driven robots designed to detect and neutralize threats. Yet, the VRYNN adapted faster than anyone anticipated. They learned to recognize the robots' patrol routes and exploit gaps in their programming. In one instance, a group of VRYNN used reflective surfaces to blind the robot's sensors, rendering them useless. The turning point came during a catastrophic storm that swept across the planet, battering the colony with hurricane-force winds and torrential rain. Power lines snapped, plunging the settlement into darkness. Communication systems failed, cutting off contact with Earth. Panic set in as the settlers struggled to secure their homes and protect their supplies. In the chaos, the VRYNN seized their chance. With the energy barriers deactivated and the guards distracted, they broke free en masse, flooding out of their enclosures like a tidal wave. The settlers, caught off guard, scrambled to contain the situation, but the creatures moved with purpose, targeting key infrastructure and disabling critical systems. By the time the storm subsided, much of the colony lay in ruins. The aftermath was devastating. Buildings were reduced to rubble, machinery rendered useless, and stockpiles of resources destroyed. Morale plummeted as the settlers grappled with the realization that their dominance over the planet and its inhabitants was far more fragile than they had imagined. For the first time, they faced the possibility that they might not survive here after all. In the wake of the uprising, the colony entered a period of uncertainty. Supplies dwindled, forcing the settlers to ration food and water. Repairs progressed slowly, hindered by the lack of materials and manpower. Tempers flared as blame shifted from person to person, fracturing the once cohesive community. Some called for retaliation against the VRYNN, advocating for a campaign of extermination to ensure their dominance. Others argued for diplomacy, proposing attempts to negotiate peace with the creatures. Dr. Voss emerged as a voice of reason amidst the turmoil. She proposed a radical solution, releasing the remaining captive VRYNN and relocating the colony to a safer area. It was a risky plan, requiring significant resources and cooperation from a divided populace. But she believed it was the only way to avoid further conflict and potential annihilation. Her proposal sparked heated debates within the council. Many dismissed it as naive, arguing that abandoning their work would mean giving up everything they had fought for. Yet, there were those who saw merit in her argument, recognizing the futility of continuing down their current path. After weeks of deliberation, a compromise was reached. The settlers would attempt to coexist with the VRYNN, establishing a buffer zone between their territories and focusing on alternative methods of resource acquisition. Implementing the new strategy proved challenging. Trust between the settlers and the VRYNN was virtually non-existent, and initial attempts at peaceful interaction ended in failure. The creatures remained wary, retreating into the wilderness whenever humans approached. Undeterred, Dr. Voss devised a series of experiments aimed at bridging the gap. She introduced non-invasive observation techniques, using drones equipped with silent propulsion to minimize disturbance. She also experimented with offerings, leaving gifts of food and shiny objects near VRYNN habitats in hopes of fostering goodwill. Slowly, progress began to show. A few bold individuals ventured closer to the settlement, cautiously inspecting the offerings before retreating. Over time, they grew bolder, allowing researchers to observe them from a distance. Through careful study, Dr. Voss discovered that the VRYNN communicated not only through sound, but also through intricate body language and chemical signals. This insight paved the way for breakthroughs in understanding their culture and motivations. Encouraged by these developments, the settlers began exploring alternative means of sustaining their colony. They turned their attention to the planet's abundant plant life, experimenting with genetic modifications to render certain species edible. They also invested in renewable energy sources, harnessing the power of the planet's geothermal vents and wind patterns. Though the transition was slow and fraught with setbacks, it marked a shift in mindset, from domination to adaptation. As relations with the VRYNN improved, so too did the colony's prospects. The settlers learned to respect the creatures' boundaries, avoiding areas they deemed sacred or vital to their survival. In return, the VRYNN seemed to tolerate their presence, occasionally venturing close enough to exchange curious glances. There were moments of beauty in these encounters, fleeting connections that transcended language and species. Yet, the scars of the past lingered. The memory of the uprising haunted the settlers, a constant reminder of the dangers posed by hubris and ignorance. They erected monuments to honor the lives lost during the conflict, vowing never to repeat their mistakes. Educational programs were introduced, teaching newcomers about the importance of respecting the planet's ecosystems and inhabitants. Amidst these changes, Dr. Voss continued her research, driven by an insatiable curiosity about the VRYNN. She uncovered evidence suggesting that the creatures possessed a form of collective consciousness, sharing knowledge and experiences across generations. This revelation challenged conventional notions of intelligence and raised profound questions about the nature of sentience itself. Years passed, and the colony evolved into something unrecognizable from its early days. Gone were the rigid structures and oppressive enclosures, replaced by sustainable architecture that blended seamlessly with the landscape. The settlers embraced a philosophy of harmony, striving to live in balance with their surroundings rather than impose their will upon them. Trade routes were established with Earth, exporting goods derived from the planet's flora rather than its fauna. The VRYNN, meanwhile, thrived in their restored freedom. Populations rebounded, and their territories expanded as they reclaimed lands once occupied by humans. Observations revealed that they had developed new behaviors, possibly influenced by their interactions with the settlers. Some began mimicking human gestures, while others incorporated discarded technology into their nests, repurposing it in ways that baffled researchers. These developments sparked renewed interest in the VRYN, drawing scientists and philosophers from across the galaxy. Debates raged about the ethical implications of studying such intelligent beings, with some advocating for strict regulations to prevent exploitation. Others argued that the VRYN's adaptability demonstrated their capacity for coexistence, provided humans approached them with humility and respect. One day, a startling discovery changed everything. Deep within the wilderness, explorers stumbled upon a massive structure hidden beneath layers of vegetation. It was ancient, its origins unknown, yet unmistakably artificial. Intricate carvings adorned its surface, depicting scenes of VRYN interacting with humanoid figures. The implications were staggering. The VRYN had not always been alone on this planet. News of the find spread rapidly, igniting a frenzy of speculation. Had the VRYN coexisted with another intelligent species in the distant past? If so, what had become of them? Were the VRYN descendants of a hybrid civilization? Or had they inherited their knowledge through some form of cultural transmission? The questions multiplied, each more tantalizing than the last. Dr. Voss led an expedition to investigate the site, accompanied by a team of experts in archaeology, linguistics, and xenobiology. As they delved deeper into the ruins, they uncovered artifacts that hinted at a sophisticated society, one that had mastered technologies far beyond anything the settlers possessed. Among these relics was a device resembling a neural interface, capable of translating thought into tangible constructs. The discovery of the neural interface revolutionized the settlers' understanding of the VRYN. Tests confirmed that the creatures could indeed manipulate the device, using it to create tools and structures with remarkable precision. This ability explained many of their earlier feats, from dismantling enclosures to disabling drones. It also suggested that their intelligence extended far beyond what had been previously assumed. Armed with this knowledge, Dr. Voss proposed a bold experiment, attempting to communicate directly with the VRYN using the interface. The risks were immense. If misunderstood, the gesture could provoke another uprising. Yet, the potential rewards, an unprecedented level of interspecies cooperation, were too great to ignore. After months of preparation, the experiment was conducted in a controlled environment. A volunteer donned the interface, projecting thoughts of peace and friendship toward a selected VRYN. To everyone's astonishment, the creature responded, transmitting images of its own memories and emotions. The connection was imperfect, prone to misinterpretation, but it represented a monumental step forward. Word of the successful communication spread throughout the galaxy, sparking widespread interest and debate. Governments and corporations clamored for access to the technology, seeing it as a gateway to untold opportunities. Ethical concerns mounted as critics warned of the dangers of weaponizing such a tool. Amidst the controversy, the settlers found themselves thrust into the spotlight, hailed as pioneers of a new era in interspecies relations. Back on Kepler, for 38b, life continued to evolve. The settlers and VRYN maintained a delicate equilibrium, navigating the complexities of their shared existence. Collaborative projects emerged, ranging from environmental restoration efforts to joint scientific endeavors. Through trial and error, they forged a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. Yet, challenges persisted. Not all humans embraced the new paradigm, clinging to outdated beliefs about dominance and superiority. Similarly, some VRYN remained distrustful, viewing the settlers as perpetual threats. Bridging these divides required patience, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to change. As decades rolled by, the colony transformed into a beacon of hope, a testament to what could be achieved when humanity chose compassion over conquest. Stories of its achievements inspired countless others to follow suit, leading to a renaissance in space exploration. Colonies sprang up on distant worlds, guided by principles of sustainability and coexistence. On Kepler, for 38b, the bond between humans and VRYN deepened. Together, they unraveled the mysteries of the ancient ruins, piecing together fragments of a forgotten history. They discovered that the planet had once hosted a thriving civilization, one that had vanished due to internal strife and environmental collapse. Determined to avoid a similar fate, the settlers and VRYN worked tirelessly to preserve their shared home. Their efforts bore fruit in unexpected ways. Advances in biotechnology enabled the creation of symbiotic organisms, capable of purifying toxic soils and revitalizing barren landscapes. These innovations attracted attention from across the galaxy, positioning the colony as a leader in ecological restoration. One fateful evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of amber and violet, the settlers gathered to celebrate their journey. Around them, the VRYN watched silently, their golden eyes reflecting the fading light. It was a moment of reflection, a chance to acknowledge how far they had come and how much farther they still had to go. For despite their successes, the settlers knew that the road ahead would not be easy. New challenges awaited, both on Kepler for 38b and beyond. But they faced them with courage, buoyed by the knowledge that they were no longer alone. Together, they had proven that even in the vastness of space, connection was possible. And so, as the stars emerged one by one, the settlers raised their glasses in a toast, not just to survival, but to the infinite possibilities of understanding. Somewhere in the crowd, a child pointed to the sky, marveling at the constellations. Perhaps, someday, they would venture forth to explore those distant lights, carrying with them the lessons of Kepler for 38b. If you enjoyed this tale of cosmic adventure and interspecies camaraderie, don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from the final frontier. Until next time, keep looking to the stars and ask yourself, what would you do if faced with the unknown?